Masquerade of the Burning Carnival going to be excellent for Greater Rift solo speeds, especially next season. This particular build is going to be one I am definitely going to be seeking out this build. It's a little bit different of a variation than a lot of content creators have put together. I actually prefer this sort of synergy as compared to the big thing I'm doing here is I'm not running a curse, and that's kind of like sacrilegious at the Greater Rift solo speed level, right, for this particular build. But this build is going to be very quick, even quicker than GR100 next season, with the extra cube slot that build is getting. 2 to 4 minutes as compared to about 3 to 5 with the GR100. And it can do about the same Greater Rifting level. It's going to be doing 115 solo speeds near the end of the season. I'm pretty doggone sure about that. So very excited to run this build in particular. So like I mentioned, we're dropping the curse, we're running the command skeletons. Now it may look very awkward as a choice, but it actually works out quite well. So what are we actually giving up here? We're losing frailty, and we're not applying our curses here, first off. So simulacrums gain all runes. One of the simulacrum runes is actually curse form. Your curse skills now apply all 3 curses. So what we are losing is the utility of applying curses to benefit from them, which actually makes it quite difficult to survive because of the leech synergy, and also decreases our immediate potential for damage because we're not cursing enemies with Decrepify, right? So Leech returning tons of health and recovery after you've cursed someone and hit them with that attack to return health, and then Decrepify via the Chrisbans will apply a slow to proc your Chrisbin sentence and help you out in that way. So those two in particular, extremely helpful, plus frailty alone, like giving that 15%, execution is going to be very helpful as well. So why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And how are we making up for it? Well, the frailty, we're just going to make up the frailty through damage. The sheer damage output that the Freezing Grass rune allows you is going to make up for the frailty. The leech recovery, we're just basically going to do without it, and the build moves so quick and is a little bit better in that way that you can drop it. One of the bigger issues is the toughness feels a little bit, because you're losing the Decrepify as well, that does that 30% damage reduction. That does have an impact on the build. It is a little bit more squishy. That's the biggest downside in my opinion. But aside from that, it's actually pretty good. We're applying a slow via our main attack with the lost time. So the synergy here is that we're running Crystallization with the lost time to get both the movement speed and apply slow to our enemies. Quick reminder, your first spear will go out. Your first spear comes from your Necromancer's attack. This will apply the slow, and then the big damage comes from the tripled damage bonus to your simulacrums. Those will follow and hit the target after they've been slowed. So you get Chrisbin, level 1 Chrisbins, so ×2 multiplier on every target that you hit pretty much, even at range. This is huge. So, yeah. And on top of that, we have the Freezing Grasp rune to target enemies and freeze them for 3 seconds, proccing our level 2 Chrisbin, our 4x multiplier, even at range. So usually with this build, you would be limited to the range of your aura of frailty. Dislocation, bone armor. It's only a 20-yard range, which means that it's a little bit, it turns it into a close range build, which this build benefits so much from dealing damage at range. I feel like if you can get those 30 to 40 yard hits, especially with the increased multiplier you would get from the Stone of Vengeance, you will destroy enemies. So that's the idea here, is that we're able to cast our command skeletons at will on any enemy we want, and freeze enemies, proccing the Chrisbans, and that's how we get more damage through the rift, and that's how I clear so quickly with this particular video. I cleared, what, a 109 with 6500 int? That's insane, right? So, granted, next season the multiplier has been reduced from the Gambledor's Marrow Guards. It has gone down from a 6 times multiplier to a 5 times multiplier. This will reduce it about 1.16 GRs, so just a little bit over 1 Great Rift. I don't agree with this change, considering this is like a 4th cube slot season, so a lot of the power of this build right now is coming from the Raylina's Shadow Hook. There's synergy here as well. The Raylina's and the 2-piece from the set here giving us all the Simulacrum runes. We get the Reservoir rune. So actually shooting for those increased maximum essence rolls is going to be pretty important for this build. We are not running the overwhelming essence passive here, which would give us about 11.5% DPS if we were to run it. But I kind of felt like these passives were more important for this build, and I'll explain that in a minute. So this particular build is running a 3.9 times multiplier as compared to a 4.3 times multiplier. My apologies. That is exactly 8.6 greater risks worth in power. So a little bit less than I said, the 9.3 value, but it's still quite a lot of power coming from this one item. Other multipliers, we're using the Maltorius, the Scythe of the Cycle. You're going to want to cast your Bone Armor Dislocation on enemies, and the reason we run Dislocation, even though we have the Freezing Grasp, is because we want to be able to stun the Rift Guardian. Sometimes that's pretty useful without having to use our essence. At the end of the rift, it gets a little dicey. You need to preserve your essence and keep up the Voracious bonus. So how exactly, you're probably asking yourself, are we spamming the command skeletons? How are we able to do this? It's such a high essence cost. We have Voracious in the build. You combine this with the Captain Crimson's bonus, and you get not only a lot of resource cost reduction, you get a lot of damage reduction as well. So this is going to give us that extra toughness that I was mentioning at the beginning we were lacking, and it's also going to give us the resource cost. So it's super important that you keep up your Voracious stacks. The beginning of the rift will be extremely difficult because you won't have this damage reduction, this 50% damage reduction, and you won't have the 50% RCR. So at the beginning of rift, I advise target the small trash. If you have to skip elites, that's fine at the beginning of the rift. Just make sure that you get these stacks up. It's really important that you maintain them. And we maintain them through the rift, even if you don't have enemies nearby, with the molting rune. So you Blood Rush, it leaves a corpse, and you have Devour on autocast or Numluck, and that will consume the corpses. So even against the Rift Guardian, you have the opportunity to preserve this bonus while you're challenging. So the Rift Guardian shouldn't be any problem, especially with the convention of elements. The Necromancer, again, having such a short rotation, only 3 elements, means that you should be able to have the convention of elements up against the Rift Guardian in breakneck time, right? So it's just such an amazing synergistic build. Movement speed here coming from the lost time, allowing you to traverse the rift that much quicker. The Fueled by Death coming into effect here. Essence Restoration coming from Dark Reaping as well, just allowing you to top off that much more easily. The Bone Prison here actually does, it serves a very good function, and that is to proc a stun on enemies that are off screen. So a lot of time, because our Bone Spear is a piercing attack, it will go through enemies and hit enemies that are off screen. And this allows your Bone Spear to proc the higher level Chrisbin on those enemies. So very important. And we're running Serration in this particular build now, giving us up to 20% multiplier at that 30-yard range. Remember, I was saying this particular build is going to want to favor those 30 to 40-yard ranges. So this is definitely something I'm keen on doing. Oh, also, Bane of the Trapped, also going to be procced at range from the slow from the lost time. Forgot to mention that, but that is also a huge benefit here. And yeah, so let's talk alternate passives real quick. You have the option of standalone. So earlier in season, if you're having a problem with toughness, we are running the command skeletons here, but it does increase your toughness by about 17-18%, somewhere in there. It's still a toughness increase, so it's something you can opt for. If you want to keep the serration but go for even more multiplier, you can, but I kind of feel like these other passives are still worth it. But if you want to opt for the overwhelming essence, you can try that out. In testing, these were the ones that felt the most comfortable. And you can also swap out serration for final service if you want that second life. Notably, you already get a second life with the set bonus, the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival here. 2-piece gains all runes. That gives you, one of the runes is self-sacrifice. If you would die with the simulacrum active, instead the simulacrum is destroyed and you are fully healed. So the interaction here is that you took fatal damage, the simulacrums die. So if you're going through the rift and your simulacrums are dying, don't get frustrated. It's just this mechanic that's going into play. And you just need to kind of keep an eye on your sims and know when they aren't there and recast them as soon as they do die, if it's available, so that you don't die. Otherwise, you have to die to reset the cooldown here. One other interaction that might be causing your simulacrums to die is the Haunted Visions itself. So if it's ticking down every second, basically, and if it attempts to tick your health down, but your health is below 1% for whatever reason, the simulacrums will die. So this is another mechanic that causes them to die off. Most of the time you don't survive in that situation anyway, but it can happen, right? So a lot of definitely interesting mechanics here going on. Anyways, it's just a smooth build. I didn't feel the Stewart's Greaves needed to be placed in this build. I feel it moves through the rift quick enough with the movement speed bonuses we've placed here alone. And I feel the extra damage here that we're able to fit in with all the extra Crisbin procs, the extra range that we get, and the multipliers from this particular setup is going to be highly advantageous, especially for a solo speed in next season. So I hope you've enjoyed this overview. Let's go over affixes real quick. We've got Bone Spear damage. Of course, that's something you're going to want to seek out. Vitality, going to be pretty important for increasing the health of your simulacrums and your own toughness, so it's going to be important there too. Life percent as well, so that's why I put life percent on the chest and shoulder piece in place of vitality. And armor also going to be fairly important, but not quite as important. So yeah, it's just a very good build. Attack speed all around. I feel you can skip the cooldown on the weapon. You don't need quite that much cooldown. However, running a little bit of extra resource cost reduction, cooldown on the shoulder piece is going to be nice. Diamond in the helmet, these sort of things, going to be very strong setup going into next season. Thank you for watching.